stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are taking a look at the Lair of Dagon, the fifth Mythos pack in the Innsmouth Conspiracy cycle. This is part 1 of the preview, where we take a look at the scenario. Part 2, where we take a look at the player cards, will follow. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these Mythos pack previews. If you'd like to support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. FFG unveiled its preview for the Lair of Dagon last week, and this Mythos pack sees the investigators infiltrating the esoteric Order of Dagon. As those of you who are familiar with the short story will remember, the protagonist in the short story, he goes to Innsmouth and he sees, he gets a peek inside the old congregational church where the esoteric Order of Dagon has set up shop, and he is horrified by what he sees. And of course, later in the short story, he is pursued by the town, led by the members of the esoteric order. Just as a little bit of a historical note, the esoteric Order of Dagon is a cult. It was founded by Captain Obed Marsh in Innsmouth, using practices that were learned from the inhabitants of a Polynesian island that is not named in the Shadow over Innsmouth. The people of Innsmouth carried out ritual sacrifices on Devil Reef to appease the Deep Ones. In 1846, during one of these sacrifices, Captain Marsh and several members of the Order of Dagon are arrested, although no formal charges are made. And the esoteric order was disbanded when the U.S. government launched its attack on the town in 1928 and dynamited Devil Reef. It's also worth taking a look at Dagon itself, the big bad in this scenario. Dagon was a short story written in July 1917 by H.P. Lovecraft. It's one of the first stories that Lovecraft wrote as an adult. The story itself is a testament of a tortured, morphine-addicted First World War veteran who finds himself stranded on a hellish expanse of slimy black mire in the South Pacific after he is marooned in a lifeboat. While exploring the island, the man encounters a white monolith engraved with unfamiliar hieroglyphs and a vast Polyphemus-like loathsome creature with gigantic scaly arms and a hideous head. It's unclear from the story whether this creature is Dagon itself or one of Dagon's worshippers. The veteran's testament is later revealed to be a suicide note, but before the narrator can do himself in, he hears a noise at the door as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it. And Dagon has gone on to be one of the common villains in the Arkham Horror Files properties. He's in most games, usually combined in some way with Mother Hydra, although we have no idea whether Mother Hydra is going to make an appearance in this particular cycle. We do still have one Mythos pack to go, though, so who knows? Perhaps the villain in that one will be maybe a combination of Mother Hydra and Dagon, or perhaps Great Cthulhu himself. The theme of the Lair of Dagon Mythos pack is curse tokens. Curse tokens have been with us since the Innsmouth Conspiracy Deluxe expansion, but they have usually been tied to player cards like Faustian Bargain and Deep Knowledge. You typically add curse tokens to the Chaos Bag by playing those types of cards, but that's not the case anymore. The encounter deck, including locations, enemies, and treacheries, will all be adding curse tokens to the bag, so even if you are not playing a deck that focuses on curse tokens, you will have to deal with them in this particular scenario, and those curse tokens are likely going to make you fail more skill tests than you would. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing if you are playing a deck that can leverage those curse tokens. The encounter deck is doing some of your work for you, packing the bag with curse tokens, which can be helpful if you are playing cards that can leverage those tokens, like the Gate of Oraksh here. It lets you reveal 7 random chaos tokens from the bag and deal a total of 1 damage, plus 1 additional damage for each curse or autofail token revealed, divided as you choose among enemies at your location. So if you are playing cards that can take advantage of curse tokens, then this scenario you should be in pretty good shape. The odds of drawing curse tokens is not that high, as long as there aren't that many in the bag. But once you get up to 10, the odds of pulling a curse token is about 1 in 3 if you're playing with an Innsmouth Conspiracy bag. A typical Innsmouth Conspiracy bag starts with 20 tokens. So if you're adding 10 curse tokens, you're about 1 in 3. But as long as there aren't too many curse tokens, like if you add 1 or 2, you should be fine. But if you add a lot, then the scenario is going to get quite a bit harder. Now, ideally, you'll draw multiple curse tokens on a test and really fail it. So you'll not only fail a test, but at least remove more than 1 curse token from the bag. So some of the future tests are a little bit easier. If you're really concerned about the curse tokens and don't have a way to leverage them, you can always include cards in your deck that can mitigate those curse tokens. There are those types of cards in most of the classes, or you can play some of the Covenants from the Into Deep Mythos pack. Those will help you mitigate those tokens as well. FFG's preview article doesn't give us a whole lot of information about how the scenario is set up or how it progresses. It mentions that the esoteric order of Dagon's decrepit and crumbling halls are tangled and labyrinthine, and that there are tidal caves that lie beneath them. The tidal caves have been a theme in many of the Mythos packs that we have seen this cycle. The investigators will need to find various keys to make progress on the scenario, and eventually the investigators will discover the Iha Inthlai statue, which is a double-sided story asset. We don't know what the statue does, but it does enter play with its cursed side face up, which does not bode well for the investigators. The preview article spoils 2 locations, the first being the Hall of Silence. It's a 4-shroud location with 1 clue, and it has the 3rd floor trait, so perhaps we will see a structure. The locations will be laid out similar to past scenarios like Echoes of the Past, which featured a ground floor, a 2nd floor, and a 3rd floor. The Hall of Silence has a forced effect. After Hall of Silence is revealed, place the set-aside purple key on it, and it also has a forced effect. After an investigator at this location fails a skill test, add 1 curse token to the Chaos bag. Considering that you are adding many curse tokens, potentially adding many curse tokens to the bag, chances are you are going to fail some skill tests, and this will make sure that you are adding more curse tokens to the bag to replace the ones that you pulled. We also have Hall of the Deep here. It is a 3-shroud location with 1 clue. It is on the ground floor. Hall of the Deep enters play partially flooded. Again, the flood mechanic being part of this cycle. And as an action, you can spend the red key. There is an audible click as the Crest of Blood fits into the stone altar. Put the set-aside Iha Inthlai statue story asset into play under your control, cursed side face up, and it is worth a victory point. So it sounds like there will be at least 3 floors to the Esoteric Order of Dagon, and possibly some tidal caves beneath that. So it looks like we're going to have another scenario that is arranged vertically. Speaking of adding curse tokens to the Chaos bag, the preview article also spoiled an enemy and an encounter card. The enemy is the CENERIAN Deep One. It is 2 fight, 3 health, and 2 evade. Humanoid monster, Deep One trait. Prey is the lowest willpower. It has the Hunter keyword, the forced effect. After Cenerian Deep One engages you, add 2 curse tokens to the Chaos Bag, and it will hit you for 1 damage and 1 horror. Because this thing has 2 fight, 3 health, and 2 evade, it's relatively easy to defeat or evade. 3 health is kind of annoying. It will take you a couple of shriveling charges or shots from a gun to take this thing down. So having some way of dealing an extra point of damage is always nice to have when you're dealing with these 3 health enemies that seem to be much more common these days than they used to be. The Cenerian Deep One does have the Hunter keyword, which is somewhat annoying, especially if you are playing an evasion-based strategy. If this guy engages you, he's going to dump a couple of curse tokens in the bag. Then you evade him, and then he's going to give chase because he has the Hunter keyword and potentially add more curse tokens to the bag. So likely if you draw this guy, you are going to be adding a couple curse tokens to the bag. That's not so bad in itself. Just a couple curse tokens isn't really that big a deal. But of course, we've already seen there are locations as well that will be adding curse tokens. So if you get if the encounter deck combos on you, you could be adding 2, 3, 4 curse tokens to the bag in quick succession, which will make this guy that much harder to fight or evade. While he has very low values to begin with, if you're drawing curse tokens, even a 2 is going to be tough to fight. He doesn't hit that hard, though. He only deals 1 damage and 1 horror. But potentially, you could be in for some pain with this guy if you happen to get trapped by him and end up drawing a few curse tokens at an inopportune time. You may end up taking more attacks from this guy than you typically would from another enemy that doesn't add curse tokens to the bag. So I think we all expected to see an enemy like this, and it will be interesting indeed to see how those curse tokens affect players going forward. There is also a treachery that adds curse tokens to the bag. This is Heralds of the Deep. It has the curse trait and the revelation. Test 3 willpower, 5 instead if your location is flooded. For each point you fail by, add 1 curse token to the chaos bag. If you cannot, Heralds of the Deep gains surge. So this is an average to above average willpower skill test, depending on the flood status of your location. Obviously, Mystics will be in much better shape than the other classes dealing with this. Poor Rogues, man, if they are at a flooded location, they could be adding 5 curse tokens to the bag in very quick succession. Rogues do have ways to mitigate curse tokens, though, so that is the, I guess, the one positive to being a rogue here. They seem to have more cards that can mitigate curse tokens than other classes, so that makes up for them having very low willpower and likely adding a lot of curse tokens to the bag. So again, this is much like Rotting Remains. How many curse tokens you add to the bag depends a lot on how much you fail by. So anywhere from 0 to 5 curse tokens. Again, this isn't necessarily a bad thing if you are playing a deck that can leverage those tokens. Here the encounter deck is doing a lot of heavy lifting for you. 5 curse tokens is a nice amount of tokens to be adding to the bag if you can use them. If you cannot use them, say you're playing a blessed deck or you're playing a deck that doesn't leverage the bless or curse tokens at all, it might be wise to bring along some cards that can mitigate the impact of those curse tokens, because they are going to put pressure on you. And while your odds of drawing 1 curse token aren't that high, if you do draw a curse token, your odds of failing the skill test go up dramatically. And of course, if you draw multiple curse tokens, your odds of failing the test are almost guaranteed. One of the worst parts about this card is that potentially you could have to take this skill test you would draw multiple curse tokens, failing this, and then just have to throw all of those curse tokens back into the bag. Now, of course, if there are already 10 curse tokens in the bag, or you have managed to seal those curse tokens on some of the cards that were spoiled in this Mythos pack, this card gains Surge. Not much of a surprise. I really don't like to see cards with Surge because you end up drawing 2 encounter cards instead of 1. But I think most of the time, unless you are playing a deck that really has gone all in on Curse, there probably will be a Curse token, at least one Curse token in the bag available that you can add, so you don't. This thing won't surge on you. Of course, this is the Lair of Dagon, and the Mythos pack wouldn't be complete without the big bad himself. Now, Dagon is a bit different than previous ancient ones we've seen. Dagon, deep in slumber, he has no fight, health, or evade. That is because he's slumbering, and he cannot attack or engage you, and he is immune to investigator actions and player card effects. He does have a forced effect, though. After an investigator at this location fails a skill test, you place 1 resource on Dagon. Then if there are at least 1 resource per investigator plus 2 resources on Dagon, you flip the card, and as an action you can spend 1 key to remove 1 resource from Dagon. So Dagon enters play. He doesn't do anything until you start failing skill tests, which again is likely to happen if you are adding a ton of curse tokens to the bag. And then once you fail a skill test at his location, you add 1 resource. If you're playing this in solo, you get 3 resources before you have to flip Dagon. If you're playing in multiplayer, it looks like you're at 6 resources. And you do have a chance if you spend a key to remove those resources. What I don't know is how common those keys will be. There are quite a few keys available, but whether you'll be able to find them in the scenario in order to keep Dagon from flipping is a question we simply don't have the answer to at the moment. Now, what happens when Dagon actually flips is a mystery, but it is likely to be very bad, given that it is an ancient one, and most of the ancient ones that we have seen are not to be trifled with, and I am sure that Dagon will be a beefy boy who will hit hard and who will have a lot of health and will be very difficult for investigators to deal with. So I think your best course of action is try to find as many keys as you can and not fail skill tests while you're at Dagon's location, so you can keep him on his slumbering side and not have to deal with him at all. But again, that could be difficult if you've had a bad string of pulls from the encounter deck or locations or treacheries, and you end up adding more curse tokens than you want to. That's going to do it for our look at the scenario in the Lair of Dagon. Not a lot of information in FFG's preview article. We know that the scenario is all about adding curse tokens to the bag. Locations, enemies, and treacheries will all do this. And of course, if you are playing a curse deck, you'll be adding tokens to the bag as well. Probably your best bet is either to play a curse deck that can leverage those tokens, so the encounter deck is doing your work for you, or pack some sort of way to mitigate those tokens. All of the classes, I believe at this point, have some sort of way of mitigating those tokens. But other than that, not a great deal of information about the scenario. It sounds like the Esoteric Order of Dagon will be a multi-level building, perhaps similar to what we've seen in scenarios like Echoes of the Past. And then, of course, you will have to find some keys, not only to advance the scenario if you find that statue, but also just to keep Dagon quiet and slumbering so he will not attack you. I suspect that if Dagon flips, you are going to be in deep, deep trouble. So I am looking forward to seeing how this particular scenario, especially the Dagon mechanic. That is what I'm looking forward to the most. But we will have, I think, Horror in High Gear comes out on January 8th, and then we will have the Light in the Fog in February, and then this one should be out in March. So we've got a few months to wait for this one. Hard to believe we're almost at the end of the cycle already. I expect we'll see our next preview article from FFG in January, and then we're on to a new cycle. So exciting stuff coming up here for the Arkham Horror LCG. This has been part 1, a look at the Lair of the Dagon scenario. Join me in part 2 for a look at the player cards, and there were a whole bunch spoiled.